Good morning, everyone. I'm apparatus specialist Perrier. Today we're going to be going over SCBAs, how to check them, how to use them, and all the different aspects involved. If you need to use the restroom, feel free to run inside. There's 2 bathrooms just down the hallway. And we'll just go ahead and dive in. So, first thing I'm going to kind of cover with you guys are just the individual parts of an SCBA, kind of how to take it apart. Each of y'all should have been issued an SCBA mask. Make sure y'all keep it safe, protected, ideally in an SCBA bag. Even if you have it connected to your SCBA, try to keep it in the bag just to prevent any scratching or damage, okay? So let's start by looking at our bottle. So the first thing you'll notice is this bottle is attached to the SCBA already. There's a strap here that keeps it secured, and then it's also locked in at this point right here. So if we're wanting to change the bottle, the first thing we need to do is loosen the strap, and then what we'll do is we'll come over here. We have 2 rings, and you'll need to pull them both to the side simultaneously, and as you see, it'll release the bottle. So once the bottle is released, you're able to take it out. If you need to swap it for a new bottle in case your bottle's low, that's how you'll do that. So to put it back on, it's as simple as lining it up appropriately. It's already wanting to drop in naturally. You just give it a little push, and that click will let you know it's locked in. So now we have it strapped back on. It's good and tight. It's not going to go anywhere. So that's our bottle and how to connect it to the SCBA pack itself. I'm going to go ahead and remove the bottle from the SCBA pack just so we can go through the further parts, make it a little bit easier for me to maneuver. Any questions so far on bottles? Good. One more thing to cover on bottles is our department for our SCBA interior is that we use a 45-minute bottle. They're filled to approximately 4,500 PSI. That is considered a full bottle. If you check your bottle in the morning and you notice it's below 4,100 PSI, we need to go ahead and change it out, put a full bottle in our pack, okay? All right, so let's go over the rest of the SCBA pack. So when we're checking our pack in the morning, the main things we want to check are straps, make sure they're not frayed or falling apart, make sure their integrity is good. See that we have our SCBA clip. This is for the regulator. When the regulator is not actively attached to something, let's always make sure to have it clipped in its safe space over here. It'll minimize damage and it'll keep the little airway clean from any debris. But we'll get to that further. So we have all of our straps. It'll be worn just like a backpack. I'll kind of show you real quick. 2 straps for our shoulders, which can be tightened to your comfort. Whatever the best way for you to feel when you're wearing this so that it's not fatiguing you too much. And then we have our waistband here. Ideally, when wearing an SCBA, all of the weight should be distributed to your waist as to prevent any further fatiguing. Usually, as my personal preference, I like to kind of loosen these shoulder straps so that way all the weight goes to my waist instead of my shoulders. So that's how you would put on an SCBA. I like to loosen all these straps when I'm done with it so that when I have to put it back on, it's easy to put back on. And we're not working super hard to try to squeeze into an SCBA pack. Each SCBA should be equipped with a unit identifier. These are Velcro. It can be removed pretty easily in case we have to swap units for whatever reason, or if we need to assign ourselves to RIG. RIG will have their own bottle identifiers, so taking this off and replacing it with a new one should be relatively easy. So for the next thing we'll cover is our regulator and our pressure gauge. So on the pressure gauge, we have a couple of buttons. So on the side here we have a yellow button, and on the front we have a red. So if we look at this pressure gauge, you'll notice that it has a gauge that lists all the different levels of where your bottle will be filled at, and we'll go through that in a second. Over here it's all the way empty, and it'll tell you if you're at 1/3 of a bottle left, which if you are, you need to alert your officer. And then it'll just kind of list by tenths what level your bottle is at. We'll go over that more when I start explaining how to check your SCBA. This is your regulator, and so it's attached on your left shoulder strap. To remove a regulator, you'll want to push these two parts together, and there's a little clasp here which will let you take the regulator off. This is useful if the regulator is damaged and needs to be changed, or if you need to clean it, so that way you're not having to lug around the whole pack. On the regulator we have, and I'm not entirely sure what this is called, I think it's called a bypass button, but this button needs to be pushed in at all times. Otherwise, if you open your bottle up, it'll bleed air. It will open itself up when you take a breath, and we'll kind of get into that later. This is the purge valve, which is used to cause air to flow freely. It has multiple uses, but primary use for it is to just bleed off any excess air when we're going to turn the SCBA off. So we can go over that here in a little bit. Also on the SCBA regulator, we have what's called a heads-up display, or HUD for short. It'll have some lights in here that'll kind of show you in your face mask where your bottle is, how much air you have left, and if your pass alarm is going off. So we'll go ahead. Reconnecting that is as easy as just lining it up and pushing it in, and it should be secured after that. Other parts of the SCBA, really the only thing here is our buddy breather system, also known as a low pressure port. Over here is what we would use to attach a RIP bag or even another SCBA to each other, so it has both the male and female parts. On another SCBA, the male part would go into the female part and vice versa. What this will do is it will begin taking from the lowest pressure SCBA. So when it's connected to another SCBA, they are now sharing air supplies, but whoever has the lower air supply will be taken from first. So keep that in mind. If you're ever having to use the buddy breather, know who has the lowest supply and know that that's where the air is coming from first. So that is the right side. So whenever you're wearing the SCBA, know that the buddy breather system is on the right side. On this stuff. Last thing to kind of cover on the SCBA, well, there's two things, but mainly just for operational purposes. This is the UAC, Universal Air Connection. This is what we would maybe call a hot fill port. In the incident where, you know, I may need air quickly, and it's just a matter of filling me up a little bit more. The UAC is utilized to take a high pressure area and flow into the low pressure area, and all it will do is just balance out the pressure. So it's not just giving it all of the air, it's just balancing the pressures out. So it does this rather quickly, and it's a good way to get air in a pinch. Alright, and then last but not least, we have the battery port. So to open the battery port over here, you can either have a really thick, juicy Phillips head screwdriver or a flathead. I tend to use a flathead, ideally a big one. To get to these batteries inside, we're going to make contact here on the screw. We're going to just loosen it until it's available. Once it's loose, you'll notice there's 6 AA batteries inside. There is a moment within the lifespan of these batteries where they will get low. The SCBA will let you know it's low with an alarm that'll kind of chirp. If you turn your SCBA on and it's just chirping intermittently, that means you have a low battery, and it's time to replace all 6 of these. We don't replace just 1 or 2, we replace every battery in there. So to have it secured again, we just line it back up. There's 3 grooves here. We just line it back up with those 3 grooves. Make sure the screw's in line, and then we just tighten it back up. Easy peasy. So for the checking portion of the SCBA, I'll actually just show you how I check my SCBA in the morning, just so you understand what best practices are. So as you see, I'm going ahead and putting the bottle back on, making sure it's clicked in place, strapping it back in, all good. I'm gonna work on trying to fix this real fast if I can. If not, it's not a big deal. Still can't do that, so I'll fix it later, just for the sake of instruction. So the thing I like to do in the morning first and foremost is I want to check my bottle's air supply. So I check the gauge down here on the bottle. It is above the 4100 mark, so we're okay there. If it was any lower than that, obviously I'd change it out. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open the bottle. So down here we have our little, I wouldn't know what to call that, valve, I guess would be the right word. And to open it, you have to push in and then open to the left. And when you notice I opened it, it turned the SCBA on. You heard the vibro alarm on the regulator. That lets me know that it's getting air properly. So once I open the SCBA, I make sure that my gauge on the strap matches my gauge on the bottle. And if that's good, we're pretty much done there. I'm just making sure my light is on the gauge. And then the next thing I'm looking at is my heads-up display, and I'm making sure that the lights on my heads-up display are matching the correct levels. So once I've figured that out, we're all good to go. Now what I want to do is check its operation.
3 more.
So now that we're there, I like to take my mask. I go ahead and put it on. As an easy way to silence this, just hitting the yellow button once will reset that 30-second timer for the pass alarm to start. So I have my face piece on. I do a quick seal check. So what I do is I just place my palm over the hand and I suck in, make sure that the mask stays to my face, which it did, so we're good. I take my regulator and I take my gauge. We're going to start by putting the regulator on the mask. We say cherry top. So we have the red purge valve up, and then we go to the left. And I take my breath, and I watch my gauge and my heads-up display, and I take really shallow breaths to make sure that the gauges are matching. Everything's checking off. First, I need to close the bottle to make sure that it's going to appropriately measure the pressure. So when I close the bottle here, the only air that'll be remaining in the system will be in the hose line from the bottle directly to the regulator. So once I have the bottle fully closed, that's all the air that's remaining. So when I start taking breaths, I should notice my gauge going down. So if you notice, I ran out of air, and as I started taking a breath, it sucked to my face, which is what I want. It means I have a good seal. So now that I have that good seal, I'm empty on air now. I know that my system's no longer pressurized. The last thing I want to check, so I had already noticed that I'm getting that 30-second pass alarm activation. It turns on. You can allow it to go all the way through, which is preference, but if it starts, the actual pass alarm begins, that's good enough for me as long as my emergency pass goes off. So to activate my pass alarm, if it doesn't happen through the 30-second because I'm unconscious or whatever, we can activate it by using the pass alarm button, which is the red button. So this is going to be really loud, but to show you an example, this is what should happen when you hit your pass alarm. So we know that all of our functions work. Battery is not low. I have not been hearing any chirping. And from there, I go ahead and power off the SCBA, which is a double click of the yellow button. And now that I'm there, I just ensure that all my straps are in good shape. Nothing's frayed, nothing's damaged. Everything's looking pretty solid. And from there, I would go ahead and conclude that my pack is ready to go for the day. If I had to change batteries, I could do that. Per our department policy, each shift we log our pack. We have a little barcode over here. The last 4 numbers are utilized in our operative IQ, which we can go over later. But that is the gist of the SCBA, and if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
What's that little part where you were checking your mask and kind of like just before that last breath it started making this weird clicking noise?
Yeah, so good question, thank you, I missed that. So that's your vibro alert. So when your bottle gets down to a quarter of air left, like it's down below a quarter of 45 psi, your HUD will turn red and that vibration will start. And that's its way of telling you like, hey, you're low on air, you need to get out of the building or whatever you're doing. So it's pertinent that we get out in a safe place where we're able to doff our mask and swap our bottle out for a new bottle. Other than that, on your HUD as well, just want to clarify that 2 green bars means you have a full bottle. 1 green bar means you're about 3/4. An amber light is about half. And then once you hit that red and you start getting vibro alert, you're at or under a quarter of a bottle left. So good question, thank you for that. Any other questions?
Yeah, is there any other way to break the seal on the regulator outside of pressing moving the purge valve?
There is. So obviously, like me taking that breath with the seal opened it, I can use the purge valve to do the air. Something else that is taught, which is not best practice because it can damage the regulator, is a solid slap can open the regulator. In a pinch, if that's really your only option, that might be something worth noting, but ideally, that's our last resort. Okay? Any other questions?